welcome to this week's Character Unlock, where we are going to spend a little bit of time, or almost all of our time, I think, talking all things Call of Duty. Because Call of Duty came out this week, and there's not an awful lot else worth talking about when Call of Duty arrives. I am your host, Andrew Brooker. Along with me is, as always, my good buddy John Miller. Hello, mate.
Hi, Brooks. How's things?
Yeah, good, mate. How about you?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Burnt out from playing Call of Duty this weekend. I annihilated that bad boy over the weekend.
Yeah, I had a tough one, actually. Literally, I had my little 2 square foot on the floor in the living room, and I barely moved until I'd finished the campaign. I put in a session this weekend. But we'll get to that in a bit, because there's one bit of news, just the one. I was kind of hoping that today was just going to be start talking about Call of Duty and then move on, and then I looked at the calendar and realised what yesterday was. And from here on in, I'm just going to let you do all of this, because this is all you, mate. You tell us about yesterday.
Yesterday, to those of you who don't know, was the 7th of November, or N7 Day. Now, some of you may not know what N7 is. N7 is the Marines, the greatest of the human Marines in the Mass Effect franchise. N7, being what it is, was Commander Shepard, was the lead N7, who later become the Spectre, who is the special police for the Mass Effect universe. He basically saved the world and the rest of the galaxy from the Reapers in the Mass Effect franchise. So, N7 Day was yesterday, so naturally, EA announced more about Mass Effect Andromeda, which is coming out early next year, I believe. And it's gonna be the game that's gonna cause me to stop existing in everywhere but my Xbox for a good few weeks, if not maybe a month. Beyond that, there was also an announcement later on in the day that Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 were made backwards compatible on the Xbox One. A bit later on, lovely as it is, they announced it was also, because it's backwards compatible, it's an EA title, EA Access picked it up. So right now you can get all 3 Mass Effect games for free if you've got EA Access. Now, EA Access is a fair whack of money a year. It's like the price of a game. And you're getting the 3 probably greatest games I've ever played in my life for nothing, essentially. Pretty much one of the best days ever in the year for Mass Effect players is N7 Day. Yesterday was not a disappointment. Unlike, well, I think last year's was a bit iffy, but this year, definitely well worth it.
So, step back a second, because remember, of course, I don't know Mass Effect that well. I'm not that big a fan. So, you tell me Mass Effect Andromeda's coming out spring next year. What's Mass Effect Andromeda, and where does it sit in the timeline for Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3? More importantly, what I mean is, they're 30 to 40 hour games. Do I have to fucking play Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 before Andromeda comes out?
Well, by all intents and purposes, yes, play Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 before Andromeda comes out, because you're really missing out on games in that way, because they are possibly some of the greatest bits of storytelling. However, Mass Effect Andromeda takes place about 600 years into the future, because that's roughly how long it takes for the people to transport from Earth to the Andromeda galaxy. They're in cryosleep during this time. The events of Andromeda start on their little journey about the same time that the Lair of the Shadow Broker DLC is taking place. So, and that's in Mass Effect 2, which is before the arrival of the Reapers, who are the main enemy, I guess, in the Mass Effect franchise. So, the guys who are travelling to Andromeda don't know anything about what happened to Shepard at the end of the Mass Effect. They don't really know about the Reapers, I'm assuming, because nobody really cared about the Reapers' arrival until the very end of Mass Effect 2, if not the start of 3. So, You get yourself that little window of everything's happy, stick a load of people on a giant spaceship, put them in cryosleep for 600 years, launch them off into the distance to go to another galaxy, and they're none the wiser about anything. As far as they're concerned, Earth is absolutely fine and nothing bad happened. So, simply put, this game features almost nothing from the original, apart from a couple of the races that were transported from our galaxy, the Milky Way, to the galaxy of Andromeda. which means that Andromeda's going to feature brand new bad guys, brand new alien species. And in the trailer, it was very, very well done. In that, at one point, one of the human characters says that we're the aliens now.
Yeah, I saw that in the trailer. It did kind of stick with me when I saw that bit. I thought, okay, so are they setting it up? I know BioWare stuff. I've been playing BioWare stuff for donkey's years. So I know that they're good storytellers. So when they say things like, we're the aliens now, are they setting up to have it so that the humans and whoever else is with them in cryosleep are treated like the invaders, and they're going to be the bad guys, whether or not we want them to be?
It's an interesting way to look at it, and you know what? I have complete faith in what BioWare are going to put for this one. I think that if we are going to be considered the bad guys, it's definitely going to be an interesting one. It's not like it's a very simple that we're the alien invaders, but we're going to make them the bad guys, like what Hollywood did with all the cowboys and Indian films, where they made the Native Americans be the bad guys just because they're not the English speaking, they're not the white man.
But do we know any details about Andromeda? Do we still get the character creation and all that kind of shit? Are we allowed to have a female protagonist?
Yes, the story will centralise around a brother and a sister. You can pick to be either of them, the Ryder brother and sister. And the interesting thing, instead of what it was where it was Commander Shepard or Fem Shep, and that's it, you are Shepard, you get to be...
Fem Shep still sucks as a name, you realise this, right?
Of course it sucks as a name, but...
It should have been Muz Effect.
that kind of works, but the new one is going to be it's the Ryder family. You're the Ryder siblings, and you pick either the bloke or the woman. And the interesting thing is the other one is still in the game. So if you're the bloke Ryder, then you will bump into your sister, and if you're female Ryder, you will bump into your brother. It seems like it's going to be a really interesting story because you don't know what those kind of interactions are going to be like. Are you going to be a happy family, or are you going to be at some point in that they woke up afterwards, after the 600 years, and they hate each other for some strange reason?
Fair enough. Well, I trust you implicitly. You tell me that they're the greatest games ever, so yeah, I'll give them a go.
Well, I can't think of anything better, and no one will convince me otherwise.
Fair enough.
They are my yardstick.
So that was the news. We had the new trailer and 3 backwards compatible games that are now on EA Access.
Yep, N7 Day worked, I think.
And it comes out March? Was it supposed to be March next year?
I think it said March 2017. Typically, Mass Effect 3 came out in March, I believe. So I think it might have been February. Either way, it's still early the year after the N7 Day that it's announced.
I think we need to move on to Call of Duty.
Yeah.
So I think we'll start off, and I know this should seem obvious, but obviously there are going to be spoilers everywhere from here on in. And obviously the only game we'll try not to spoil is Infinite Warfare. That only came out 3 days ago, and to spoil that would be pretty dickish. But
it's difficult to spoil a game that has a story that was like that.
I don't know, there are things, because I was talking to somebody on Twitter today about it, and I was like, they quite clearly haven't got to the end of the game yet, and I want to say a couple of things that I really can't because it would actually spoil it. We're not talking, we're not talking big world-ending events, we're talking just things that happen in the game. But outside of Infinite Warfare, I think we can safely say that we will spoil to varying degrees the first 12 of the main line of Call of Duty games.
No, I'm going to spoil the shit out of some of them.
Obviously, we're not just going to go straight in and spoil before we say what's going on. So if there's a game you haven't played, like Call of Duty 4, for example, if you don't want to have it spoiled for you, if you're going to play it, skip forward 5 minutes and you'll be at the next game that you don't care about. I did briefly consider trying to do it spoiler-free, and then thought it would be a very, very short podcast if we'd done that.
Yeah, I'm looking through some of my notes that I made about the games, and yeah, I've not written spoilers down for any of them, but it was very difficult to write some of them in.
Yeah, some of the stories are easier to spoil than others, very much so. So should we dive in?
Yeah, I'll let you take the lead because I started with the third one.
Okay, so back in 2003, was when the first Call of Duty was released. Now, it was released by a then very small company called Infinity Ward. You know, these are now a world famous company, but at the time nobody knew who they were. They'd been brought on by Activision to make this first Call of Duty game, and a lot of them came from 2015 Inc., the developers. These are the guys that made Medal of Honor Allied Assault. And kind of, these guys moved over and became Infinity Ward and started making Call of Duty as a response to Medal of Honor and its popularity. So, literally, from the start, Call of Duty was there chasing the stuff that was popular at the time. I'm not going to hold that against it just yet. Releasing back end of 2003, the first Call of Duty, it came out on PC and Mac. That was pretty much it, early release. I can't believe this was actually a thing, but I believe at one point it came out on the fucking Nokia N-Gage, which is...
Everything came out on the N-Gage at that point.
It's just hilarious. Now, I'll be completely honest, I didn't play Call of Duty 1 until I got the free downloadable copy of Call of Duty Classic that came with Modern Warfare 2, like 6 years later. But I did play Call of Duty 1, and I really enjoyed it. It's a World War II shooter. Instead of being, it was the first game that done this whole, you stick with a squad. Now, you don't have control over the squad like you do in a lot of games nowadays, but you stuck with a squad, and whether or not they were actually helping, you had the illusion of them helping you when you got into gunfights. You weren't this lone wolf dude anymore like you were in essentially every shooter before it. And on top of it being, kind of revolutionary in that aspect, it told a story across several campaigns. So for Call of Duty 1, so like I say, back in 2003, this was revolutionary. You had a British, an American, and a Soviet campaign, all spanning between 1942 and 1945. When I was doing my notes for this, what I found really interesting, it brought back a lot of memories from when I played it. And actually, you'll notice if you ever play Call of Duty Classic, or just go back and play Call of Duty 1 on the PC, there's a lot in this game that's still there now. Outside of things like this game, essentially, it didn't invent, but it was one of the first ones to really kind of pioneer ADS, aiming down the sights.
Yeah.
And giving you an eye on sight. It was one of the first games really to do that. It told a lot of stories. It went from covers Operation Overlord, which was basically the Battle of Normandy and D-Day. So we do that. We have the Battle of the Bulge, which was one of the last big German offensives of World War II. Operation Tonga, which was the airborne side of D-Day. Absolutely loads. It covered, you spent time on the dam, I think it's called the Edessy Dam or the Eder Dam, that was destroyed by the very, very, very famous Dam Buster Squad. These guys, the famous footage of these guys and their bouncing bombs going across the water into this dam. It was that dam, and you spend time there. So it wasn't just... Obviously, Medal of Honor done it as well. It spent some time in real-life locations, but Call of Duty seemed to have a real need, a real want to get as many of these stories in and tell a story as well. Like, there was always some narration or a bit of text to tell you what was going on. It wasn't just your dude go and shoot things. There was always a point to what you were doing. And Call of Duty 1 was... I know it's become a series that's become very divisive, but I will say that Call of Duty 1 was revolutionary when it came out. Holy crap, dude, 13 years ago.
Yeah, I don't think I was old enough to play it back then. Not that it stops the kids playing it now. Like, it's like these 18 rated games, and you hear these little squeaky 11-year-old voices down your headset when you play the multiplayer.
Yeah. But it's all interesting you say that, though, because I mean, it's not the first couple, at least. Obviously you were going around killing people, and that's never family friendly. But it wasn't. It was never like ultra violent like it can be now. And like I say, when I was going through these notes, there is a point where it goes from just a game to holy shit, this is quite violent.
Yeah.
It ain't Call of Duty 1. Call of Duty 1 doesn't have that at all.
I think it was long after. I think it was the fourth one where they actually go from, teen rating to mature rating. So we're talking 12 to maybe 15/18.
But what I found really interesting, or one of the things I found really interesting when I was reading through notes for this, and I'll be honest, as much as almost anybody that would do a podcast like this, most of my information comes from A, memory, and B, Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Or the Call of Duty wiki if you want a few extra details. But, But what I found interesting going through this was some of the people that were involved in the background of these things. And with Call of Duty, especially for the first half of its lifespan, its composers, the people that do its music, some of them, when you read who it is, I know that name. And Call of Duty 1's a fantastic example, and I'm absolutely going to butcher this, and I know at least one person who's going to be listening to this who's really into their film music, so I'm going to apologise profusely for mispronouncing Michael Giancino, I think. Fuck knows. I'm not gonna try it.
You're gonna make me look it up just so I can pronounce it properly.
Gianchino.
I'm gonna go with I always find it quite Giacchino.
Giacchino. Yeah, that works. Actually, I missed it, and I wasn't reading a composer. I was reading something off a Starbucks menu.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so this guy, Michael Giancino, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he done work on, he done the music for a couple of the Mission Impossible films, Cloverfield, the Star Trek remake, and he's pretty prolific in Pixar Studios. He's done a load of their music, so this isn't a nobody they've got to come and do their music. This is a guy that's maybe not at the time. I didn't go too far back in his filmography, but at least now he's pretty well known and does a lot of good work. I was very, very impressed. But actually what impressed me, not the most, maybe surprised me, was when you start looking at the voice work. Because Call of Duty 1, there's not that much in the way of voice acting in it. There's not like we get in the later installments. But even so, we have Jason Statham makes an appearance in it.
Yes, he does.
As does Giovanni Ribisi, which I could not fucking believe. I just could not believe it. But yeah, it was interesting reading up on Call of Duty 1, because it's been a while since I played it, but obviously I didn't play it when it first came out. I don't know what games were out in 2003, but I would have been 21. So outside of drinking a lot, I was playing probably a lot of RTS games around about that point. And certainly a World War II shooter that wasn't Medal of Honor probably wasn't on my radar at all.
You were probably playing StarCraft.
Or more than likely. So... And you say you never played Call of Duty 1?
Didn't play Call of Duty 1.
I would definitely say if it ever appears on like Steam for a couple of quid, I'd pick it up. It's short, and it was praised for being a great game, but a lot of people did say the campaign's a bit short, which hasn't ever changed in 13 years. Call of Duty campaigns are still short.
Well, you don't play Call of Duty games for the campaign. I say that.
I do.
Well, yeah, you do. I do. And I'm assuming a lot of people kind of do, because they do have pretty decent stories across the board. We'll get into that more later, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's the multiplayer which I'm guessing, well, this is probably just number 4 onwards. It's the multiplayer which is what everyone cares about.
So, it's a couple of years later, and it did take a couple of years for another Call of Duty game. And when you notice that Call of Duty 2 was also made by Infinity Ward, which makes complete sense to me, because a 2-year gap is exactly what we have now, or what we had midway through this franchise. Every studio was given 2 years to make their Call of Duty game, so it seems like they were given 2 years to make a sequel. I kind of feel I need to clarify what we're going to be talking about, because when I said I wanted to talk about Call of Duty, I kind of meant the 12, 13 main games. There have been dozens and dozens of spin-offs for this fucking thing. There have been slightly different Wii versions, there have been DS versions, Vita versions, expansion packs that weren't really expansion packs. Most notably, what's going to be missing from this list, because I A, didn't play it, and B, couldn't really find out that much information about it, is Call of Duty Big Red One, which always baffled me. I just never came across it. It's not something that's ever appeared on my radar.
Isn't Big Red 1 just Call of Duty 2?
No.
Except on console?
No, because Call of Duty 2 was a launch title for the 360.
Okay.
And then Big Red 1 was something else. At least this is what Wikipedia tells me. But anyway. So in October 2005, Call of Duty 2 was released on PC. A little bit later that year on the 360, I believe, as a launch title for the 360. Again, made by Infinity Ward.
Classic Xbox. PS2 year. 360 wasn't out then.
It wasn't. I think the Big Red One. Big Red One was made, I believe, by a different company. They were made by Grey Matter, which was kind of merged into Treyarch, who we're going to get to in a minute. I believe Big Red One was Call of Duty 2-ish for PS2 and Xbox original, and maybe the GameCube. Maybe
Yeah, I think GameCube. Yep. Yeah.
vanilla Call of Duty 2, let's call it standard Call of Duty 2. Let's say 2005. Infinity Ward made it again. It done a couple of things. It stuck to the Call of Duty feel, that everybody seemed to really enjoy, and was praised heavily for it. But it also done a couple of things different, and this was where it done quite well. It introduced regenerating health. So it was the first in the Call of Duty series to have regenerating health. So instead of running around looking for health packs, you just hide behind cover and you'll get your health back. I don't know why it was decided that we would do that, but someone somewhere decided let's just do regen health instead, and that paved the way for almost every first-person shooter that's come out since 2005.
Yeah, because nobody wants to go looking for med packs.
No. But it also introduced at the same time, it introduced the thing that we see a lot now is as you get close to having, very, very low health and close to dying, you get the red screen and the slightly louder heartbeat as you try and go, as you try and move. And again, this was something that the Call of Duty essentially invented and has been a staple of the series ever since, to quite comedic lengths, as we'll discuss a little bit later on. But on top of all that, it also had a much bigger emphasis on multiplayer. And I'm desperately hoping that anybody that's listening to this, hoping to listen to stuff about Call of Duty, realises that I am not a Call of Duty multiplayer player. I usually play a little bit for each game, find I'm getting annoyed with it and turn it off. And this was no different when I first got my hands on Call of Duty 2. I don't remember much of Call of Duty 2 or 3, to be honest. I don't think they made that much of an impression on me. But I do remember playing the multiplayer and not really liking it that much. So I moved on. And it's not to say the multiplayer is bad. The multiplayer clearly isn't that bad, because for more than a decade they've been sticking to that formula and it's been working for them. But for me, Call of Duty multiplayer, not really my thing. But there was this emphasis on multiplayer for Call of Duty 2. Infinity Ward as a developer set for themselves the standard that they would try and stick to and maybe beat for the next few years. Pretty much everything. So when you played Call of Duty 2, it felt like a nice evolution of Call of Duty 1. It felt like they'd learnt a few lessons that they didn't maybe need to learn, but just slight improvements that could have been made, and they definitely done that right, I think. We got the now iconic, if that's the word for it, grenade indicator. It tells you what direction the grenade's in, so you know which way to run from it.
Yeah, I still make that mistake now.
Yeah, don't we all?
See,
don't we all?
Danger indicator, run towards the arrow.
Yes, it was a good evolution, and it more than the gameplay, more than the multiplayer for me. What it done was it was another game that was focusing a lot on the history, and again, like Medal of Honor before it, and it had a lot of real life, or real at the time, scenarios that in 2005 we hadn't really played games like that. We were getting into learning, we just people like you and me or just finished school, and if we've got an interest in that kind of thing, Call of Duty was actually really good. It was it taught you a little bit, and Call of Duty 2 it has battles in Moscow, has the Battle of Stalingrad, which was in the first Call of Duty. This was a problem, actually, when I was writing these notes. This is something that came up a little bit. Again, we'll talk about it a little later on with one of the future games, but they repeated scenarios quite a bit for some of these games. Like Stalingrad comes up in 1, 2, and 3, I believe? No, it doesn't come up in 3.
No,
that was different.
World at War, maybe, I think?
Stalingrad comes up in World at War, and the other one that comes up in World at War, you actually end World at War the same way you end Call of Duty 1.
Raising a flag in Berlin.
Yeah, right at the Reichstag.
Yeah.
So yeah, Stalingrad comes back in Call of Duty 2, as does I think you do a campaign that ends with the start of Operation Overlord, which, like we spoke before, was D-Day. You have some extra ones. You have Hill 400, which literally it was an American offensive up a hill. It was called Hill 400 because it was 400 meters high. Literally, that was how original it was. But
makes sense.
Yeah, but it had all of these scenarios that you hadn't played before, and I quite enjoyed it for that. And as we go on in the series, I enjoy Call of Duty for much different, much more varied things than just the historical setting, which pretty much goes out the window about the halfway mark. But these actual real life scenarios, and the things like I said, like Hill 400, is not something everybody knows. Everybody knows, Stalingrad was a major part of the war, even if you didn't realise that there was a battle of Stalingrad.
Everybody knows the landing of the beaches at D-Day.
Exactly. But when you can have something like, like I said, it's Hill 400 or Reichstag, because not everybody knew about that at the time. To say it's educational and fun, no, it's not. It's a fucking shooty bang bang game. But it sticks a couple of things in your memory that maybe you remember later on. Oh yeah, I knew about that, but I played that bit in Call of Duty. So what? I played it in Call of Duty. I now learned that this was part of World War One or World War Two or whatever, wherever we ended up at the time. But Call of Duty 2, and similar for me for Call of Duty 3, not really that much of a lasting impression. Good games, I remember them being good, but didn't really stick with me that much. Not as much as some of the later ones did. But you say you didn't play Call of Duty 2 either, did you?
No, 1 and 2 I didn't play. Call of Duty 3 I did. Amusingly, Call of Duty 3 I played on the Wii.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a Wii back then. I was 16, obviously. Everyone had a Wii back in 2006. It was probably one of the most fun shooters I'd ever played. I think it probably helped it was on the Wii, so I actually had the whole point and click. It was actually quite a fun game. My assumption is that it was no different, really, the Wii version to the Xbox or the PlayStation version. There's no real way of telling, I guess, without playing the other versions, which I can thanks to backwards compatibility. But
yeah, I don't think I ever played the Wii version. I'd imagine that they're not that much different, mainly because it had a very, very short turnaround.
Yeah, it was 8 months, I think they said.
Yeah, under a year. Treyarch were given less than a year to develop Call of Duty 3. And, I mean, with that in mind, it wasn't a bad game.
Well, no, there was, 14, 15 missions? And it was 4 characters? Was the American, British, Canadian, and the Polish guys? Yeah.
Yeah.
So 4 interlocking campaigns that kind of tell an over story between them, which was new to the Call of Duty story, because before it was a series of separate campaigns. Now it was just one master campaign where you all have one goal at the end of, beating the Nazis, obviously.
Yeah, so this one was where the other two had spent time across multiple theatres of war, if you like. This one, while it had 4 campaigns, it was all centred around the same area and the same operation, more or less.
The Normandy Breakout or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's called the Normandy Breakout. It was an area called Chambois, I think. Chambois, there you go. I don't do French. I barely do English.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, but it was set just around that area. And while it was there was an interlocking campaign, and it was across a wide area, you had the same goal. The thing for me, and I don't know if you're the same, you maybe can talk a bit more about it, but there was only really one memorable mission for me in Call of Duty 3, and outside of being an overrun tank operator at the bottom of a hill, I don't remember much. Not at all.
Now, I remember the British campaign because there was the scene in it, in one of the cutscenes, because in the British campaign it was the combined British and French. So it was you're playing as a British guy and you help a load of French SAS do a fair bit of work, and according to Wikipedia there are characters who've moved from other Call of Duty games, United Offensive, whatever that is. I'm assuming that was the first one.
United Offensive was a spin-off or a side project of something. It was one of the ones that appeared in the list of Call of Duty games that I had no fucking idea what it was.
Apparently, if you care enough about Call of Duty that you've played the other spin-off games, then yes, these are characters that have featured in both that, and they've moved into Call of Duty 3. Some of them later die, apparently.
United Offensive was an expansion pack for Call of Duty 1.
Oh, okay.
Which I didn't even realise was a thing.
Apparently they've been doing DLC all the way back in Call of Duty 1. Anyway, so I remember the French-English campaign because that was the one that featured stealth. It was the one you had. I think you had a silenced pistol, or at the very least a silenced rifle, because you were trying to secure a zone because you just parachuted into northern France that was in an area that was occupied by German troops. So I remember that part. Well, this was like 10 years ago, so the fact that I remember that is quite impressive.
That's not bad going at all. Now, the thing with Call of Duty 3, doing reading up on it, and I didn't realise this at the time. There are a couple of big names again in the background for it. So the music was produced by Joel Goldsmith.
I can't believe you managed to not be able to pronounce the most English name that we've come across so far.
But yeah, so Jerry Goldsmith's son, Joel, who didn't do much. He was a relatively well-known composer, but was kind of always overshadowed by his dad. But he done the music for it. But it was written by a guy called Mark Guggenheim, who also wrote things like Perfect Dark Zero. So for me, Perfect Dark Zero for me wasn't that good, but it kind of Call of Duty 3. When I read that and I went, that explains a lot of the negativity towards Treyarch Call of Duties, in my opinion. When you half-ass it with a not very well-known composer and a not very well-known writer, and obviously, it's not always their fault. They're only given a few months to make the damn game. But from what I remember of Call of Duty 3, it was a weak installment in comparison to the first two.
Wow, the writer really didn't do very well, even after doing Call of Duty 3. Looking, he wrote a screenplay for Green Lantern.
Oh wow, yeah, that's not good. So it essentially, like Call of Duty 3, essentially became the first churned out Call of Duty game.
Yeah, the downhill spiral of churning out Call of Duty games every year.
Yep.
Kind of, it started badly, but at least they had the other development team working on a good Call of Duty game.
Yeah. So obviously we have Call of Duty 3 is done, and 2007 rolls along, and this happens.
50,000 people used to live here. Now it's a ghost town.
Our so-called leaders prostituted us to the West, destroyed our culture, our economies, our honor.
U.S. Marines stationed on high alert were given the order to invade the small
Nikolai! Foreman check! The crews are at Terry!
Just as they lay waste to our country, we shall lay waste to theirs.
You think this will stop the bloodshed?
Вы все равно скоро сдохнете.
Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. Anyone that's played any Call of Duty game will tell you this was the turning point for Call of Duty.
Not just Call of Duty, just shooters in general.
Yeah, and especially, as much as I hate to have to talk about it, multiplayer shooters as well. I mean, this Modern Warfare blew everything out the water. It was an honest-to-goodness phenomenon that just no one expected to happen.
It was the golden egg.
And it really, really was. But it was... So, Infinity Ward, at this point, they've obviously gone, right, we need to not do another World War II game. We need to do something a little bit different.
There's only so many battles out there that people know about, that people care enough about to keep playing World War II games.
So what they done was they went... So obviously this was released in 2007. They set it in 2011 in this kind of fictional, slightly alternate timeline, but not really. It still had a straight from the headlines kind of story to it. So, Middle Eastern terrorists, Russian terrorists, nuclear bombs and things, and all stuff that scared the crap out of everybody that's been around long enough to, haven't ever heard the words like the Cold War. It's that kind of story. The thing with Call of Duty 4 was it wasn't just its story that was revolutionary, or it wasn't just the multiplayer. It was the gameplay. It was fluid. It was just a beautiful, beautiful game to play. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure where to begin with this game. I'll tell you how we'll start. Call of Duty 1, when it was made, Infinity Ward had a staff of a little over 20 people. By the time we got to Modern Warfare 4,
3 in
Call of Duty 4,
yeah,
Modern Warfare 1, Infinity Ward had increased fivefold in size. It was a 100-strong studio working 10 to the dozen on this game, which, like I say, it blew everything out of the water. I mean, you played Modern Warfare, I'd assume.
Yeah, I played it. It wasn't until after Modern Warfare 2 had been released. I think it was getting close to Black Ops arriving by the time I'd actually played it, because one of my friends yelled at me because I mentioned in a game that I'd never played it. So he said, go back and play it. So got a hold of a copy, finished the story. Yeah, it was pretty good. I certainly enjoyed it, I'd say.
it was. I think it was one of the first games, or maybe not the first game, but one of the more recent, one of the earliest of the most recent games that we've played or we've been playing. They had a storyline that wasn't just, you couldn't just move on from it. You know, you couldn't just do a mission and move on to the next one. So there are certain parts, and I do kind of apologise if I spoil this for anybody, but you can't talk about Modern Warfare and not talk about this. You know, it's set in the near future, and not far into the story, someone drops a nuke on a, well, it doesn't drop it, someone detonates a nuke in a city, wiping out everybody, including your character, who not long after you're forced to spend time with as he dies. It was one of the most harrowing experiences I think I've had in a game for quite a while. Only recently actually topped, maybe, or at least equaled for me with Battlefield 1, but that's for a different day. You know, it was this kind of horrible moment. Okay, so it was like, oh, that's a bit hardcore. Fucking hell, they've dropped a nuclear bomb. Okay, that's a bit hardcore. And then within a minute, you're back playing your character, and literally you're just crawling around trying to survive, and then not. And
the mission was essentially, it's a cutscene of you leading into the mission that you want, where it's you're in the helicopters or something, and you're trying to stop the nuke from going off. That's your mission.
Well, no, you're nowhere near the nuke. You're trying to get clear because someone's warned you that it's actually your characters that you've been playing as earlier have warned you that it's there.
Yeah.
And you're there on a different mission.
I need to
you're just
get
a
around
soldier.
playing
You're
it
no
again.
one special, and you and you have to get into your helicopter and fuck off quick and get to minimum safe distance. And something happens, you have to land and then try and get away, and you don't get away quick enough, and your helicopter's taken down when the nuke goes off, and you're in control of your character more or less for all of this. So this is where it's one of the few times that first-person shooters have actually done what they're supposed to do and put you in the position of being this person. You know, you're not just standing there with a controller. You feel like you're the guy. You're there, and it's happening to you. And I noticed actually while I was playing it the other day, the vibrators in my controller were going fucking mental, absolutely mental. And like, it didn't drag you away from the game, but you were struggling to hold on to it as it was, you know, as this thing was happening. Yeah, a little bit later, and it's only a couple of minutes, you're back in the same character's position in a crashed helicopter, blood everywhere, including your blood, and you drag yourself out of the helicopter and die. And it's just horrible, you know. And it's not something that, up until this point, I don't think we'd ever had something like that happen. All of a sudden, everybody that's playing this, what's supposed to be just a bit of a fun shooter's gone, oh fuck, that's terrifying. You know, it's kind of, and like I say, it's born of this post-Cold War, everybody's nuclear fear, and it's put right up there on the screen for you to play, and it's genuinely harrowing. And it was a unique experience at the time, you know, from a story point of view. But when you're done with that, you then go on to play a revolutionary multiplayer that has literally changed the face of online gaming forever, with, you know, kill streaks. The most original thing ever to come out of this game was kill streaks, and now every game has it. There will never ever be any denying how much effect Call of Duty 4 has had on shooters in general for the past 10 years.
Yeah, as someone who picked it up long after Modern Warfare 2 had been released, and I'd played it, Modern Warfare 2, I'd finished the story of Modern Warfare 2 at least once. I went around to playing Call of Duty 4 for the first time, so this is what, three years after it was released.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, apart from two moments in the entire game, one you've mentioned, the story kind of fell a little flat for me. It's just, it wasn't the game that was sold to me by my friend and by reviews and by everything. It was everyone saying that the story was the greatest thing in the world, but I'm coming into it from having played the second Modern Warfare game, so more of that later. But like I said, apart from two moments, the nuke going off and the opening credits scene. In the car.
Yep, President Assad.
No, the other one. It's President Al-Falani.
Yeah.
Assad's the bad guy.
Assad's the guy that kills him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But spoilers, obviously. Yeah, it was. Apart from those two moments, the story wasn't anything, and I'm getting the similar feeling playing the remaster. After I played the remaster, I'd finished Infinite Warfare at this point, and decided to flick on the Modern Warfare story to give it another bash through, and I'm as far as playing as the Army Rangers walking through the town.
Jackson.
Yes, I've done the mission of them inside the news station, and I've shot out all the TVs that I could find.
Yeah, I missed one somewhere.
Yeah, I think there's 2.
I always do.
Before you get to the TV station that you need to shoot.
Yeah,
at.
there are. They're up on roofs.
Yeah, I think.
And I found those.
Yeah, I only
still
found
didn't
one of
get
them.
The fucking trophy.
Yeah, fucking probably bugged or some shit. But yeah, I'm on the mission after that one as the Army Rangers, and it's not drawing me in. It doesn't.
Really?
It doesn't. I don't. I tell you what, Infinite Warfare, the story was more enticing to me than Call of Duty 4's story was.
I mean, that's interesting because something I was gonna save maybe and bring up a little bit later. But there's this thing with Call of Duty 4, and I do genuinely think that Call of Duty 4 and Modern Warfare 2, maybe just the Modern Warfare arc in general, are the peak of Call of Duty campaigns.
I'm not denying that they are probably the best of the stories overall, but
what I mean is, with things like, if I said to you, name me, a couple of big things that happen in Black Ops 2, there'll be a couple of people that can name a couple of the big moments, but, if you say to somebody, all gillied up, everybody knows all gillied up, it's, okay, so the story, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the first-person shooter story. I mean, I thought the story was excellent. It has these, and the only word for these missions, as far as I'm concerned anyway, is iconic. All Gillied Up is a yardstick for so many stealth sections in all games since Call of Duty 4. And like I say, the nuke going off was just, it was revolutionary, and nobody had really done that before. And I mean, outside of things like Doom and Quake, where all hell constantly breaks loose, quite literally, in some of those games. But actual real life, only a couple of years away from where we really are, and someone's launching, nuclear missiles. I mean, obviously, not everybody feels the same, and obviously you don't. And when you play it after Modern Warfare 2, I could see that probably being a problem, because Modern Warfare 2 as a story, I thought also was excellent. But no, Call of Duty 4, it changed so much when it came to first-person shooters and how their stories are written. It forced people to actually have a proper narrative, not just, here's people, kill them, which is what a lot of our shooters up until that point were. So moving on from that, although actually no, not quite moving on from that, one thing I will say, because I did, like I said, I looked at like the writers and things like that, and while nothing really stuck out apart from the fact that Billy Connolly, the man from The Bill, played Captain Price, and the dude who just does nothing but dodgy fucking London gangster films now, Craig Fairbrass, played Gaz. The music, interestingly, was done by the guy that also then went on and done the music for Titanfall, which, while anybody that doesn't know the story of Infinity Ward and Titanfall would find that interesting, I actually found it quite funny that the guys clearly took their composer with them as well when they left Infinity Ward.
Well, you would, wouldn't you? Let's be honest.
Yeah. Anyway, so moving on. So then we're now
back to
solidly, we're solidly into the back and forth between Infinity Ward and Treyarch. Call of Duty is a yearly franchise, and there's no getting away from that. Treyarch decide not to do anything modern, and they decide to go back to World War II. So did you play World at War?
I did. I picked World at War up at launch. It was because I think a lot of people told me I missed out on Modern Warfare, but the idea of modern combat just didn't appeal to me back then. And when they announced another World War II shooter, I was got to get hold of that one. So picked it up at launch, and as far as I'm concerned, it didn't disappoint. You had the COD 4 engine, like all shooters, like at the same time, had the COD 4 engine. I think like the James Bond game had a COD 4 engine at one point.
Well, I believe the James Bond game was made by Treyarch.
You may be right. I don't know.
I don't think I played, apart from like GoldenEye.
Everybody
really played. I didn't play many James Bond games.
I played a couple of the PlayStation 2 versions because they actually had original stories, which were not terrible actually. So
fair enough.
But this is a game where it had a co-op campaign, I think, that was quite famous for it, except for one mission, which was only available if you're playing single player, where you fly a boat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that I remember that much because I played the co-op campaign and then played the campaign in single player and got really confused as suddenly when I'm flying boats around.
Yeah. No, I think I only played World at War once. I don't think I ever played it in co-op.
Now, World at War was definitely one of the games where we absolutely moved into the realms of we're going full 18-year-old gaming, like proper mature, because it's the one that you could shoot people's limbs off.
Yeah,
You got
so
a flamethrower at one point, and you could just set people on fire. You watch their bodies just burn. It's really fucking horrendous.
It had some really like proper blood-curdling screaming in it as well when you killed or when you shot somebody.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't just this dead. It was like really horrific. You know, someone may have actually been in pain when they were recording the audio for that.
Almost full
kind of
Wilhelm.
audio. Yeah, it was not nice. Like, it was not a pleasant game to play, and at quite a few points it wasn't fun. And I think this kind of continues on from what I was saying with COD 4. Like, it had parts of it that made you think. It wasn't just good time, fun times, shooty thing game. You know, now we were in quite a horrible little game that, you know, was really designed to make you uncomfortable in places. And where I know a lot of people kind of slagged on World at War's campaign, but I thought it was brilliant and really, like I say, quite genuinely uncomfortable.
Yeah, when you're walking through like Japanese rice fields with a flamethrower, you kind of do start to think a bit more about the whole, what the fuck am I doing with my life? I'm having fun setting people on fire.
Yeah. But yeah,
But you're killing the people who aren't the white man, so it's all okay.
well, yeah, that's, you know, it's always good. They're the people you're killing. It definitely had this kind of more emphasis on the horrors of war, didn't it? It had this to make you realise that, you know, you might be having fun, but lads, this wasn't a good time.
Yeah. Well, I find it's quite amusing. It's the whole war is terrible, and you know you're playing these games and you're seeing the horrendous stuff of war, and yet we still remember those many conversations we overheard while we were working together at the school, in hearing the kids say, "I'd be great in the army. I'm well sick at sniping on Call of Duty."
Yeah, but kids are twats.
Yes, they are.
Every single fucking one of them. But so, I mean, the thing with World at War, okay, so this is getting back onto games. There are a couple of memorable points of World at War for me. For me, most notably, like we touched on earlier, finishing the game, you and your mate Gary Oldman, who does one of the voices for it.
Yeah, Reznov.
Yeah, Victor Reznov, who is probably, outside of Price and Soap, probably the most memorable character from a Call of Duty game. And his voice, I mean, it's Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
He brought the same performance to that as he brought to every film he's ever been in. You know, I fucking adore Gary Oldman, and I thought he was amazing.
Gary Oldman is one of the
Reznov.
greatest human beings of all time.
That's not to take anything away from his co-star in World at War, your American boss and the narrator of the game, Mr. Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah.
Some of the most memorable parts of this game are with Reznov. You know, like I said earlier, finishing the game by planting the flag on the roof of the Reichstag, ending the war in that part of Europe, essentially. You know, it was a really, really good moment. It's a really cool moment to play, even though you're clearly dying, and Gary Oldman says to you, as long as you're alive, the war won't stop. Yeah, okay, I'm just going to die now. But, you know, you had a sniper hunt with him, if I remember rightly.
I think so, yeah.
Which was very cool. Yeah, I thought Gary Oldman done a great job, and he's probably some of my favourite voice work in the Call of Duty franchise. But then there's not forget, World at War introduced more, or it done almost as much for multiplayer as Call of Duty 4 did. Was it introduced Nazi zombies?
Yeah.
It started off as just a little mini game.
And now look at it.
Well, like, exactly. Now look at it.
You know,
It's this massive, you know, if you don't put zombies in your game, like it used to be a thing, it would only be in Treyarch games, and now everybody wants it in all of their games.
yeah, zombies are everywhere. But the thing is that I bet nobody was thinking Nazi zombies would take off the way it did. I mean, how many films now that feature zombies that were of Nazi soldiers?
Yeah, you can't. It's an uncountable number.
It's like,
I think it's like trying to get to the end of Pi.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous that as a whole, Nazi zombies exist outside of Call of Duty World at War, and they've moved into film, TV, all kinds of shit. They're just everywhere. But beyond that, at no point did the guys at Treyarch think zombies is going to be the staple to the Call of Duty franchise for Treyarch games. And even this, I think the Infinite Warfare has the zombies game mode, and that's an Infinity Ward game.
Yes.
So we've got Nazi zombies, later just classed as zombies because they stopped being just Nazis. It's just whatever the enemy it is at the time that you're facing is just they just happen to be zombies. But it's bigger than standard multiplayer. People go well out of their way to try and find Easter eggs, like the Pack-a-Punch locations, weird little things like trying to find out how to do certain things. And I only found out recently when looking into it, there's a story. Mm-hmm. There's a story to zombies. I thought it was just standard horde mode, shoot everything, last as many waves as you can. But no, there's actually objectives to go out of your way to complete, and it tells a story overall.
I'm almost certain that the Black Ops games, their zombie modes have an overarching story as well. So there's a story that runs through all 3 games and their zombie campaigns,
which is more than what the game's actual campaigns does.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to that. I'm quite looking forward to that. Because for the most part, everything I have to say about Call of Duty is more or less positive. At this point, between Call of Duty 5 and Modern Warfare 2, I suppose World at War and Modern Warfare 2, because they stopped with numbers after Modern Warfare. But
yeah. Well, even the remaster doesn't even mention Call of Duty 4, it just says Call of Duty Modern Warfare remastered.
Yeah.
So it's like, looking back at it, 3 was the last number. 3's the only number, in fact.
At this point, now Call of Duty is this behemoth of a game. Like, it's unstoppable now. And the second the marketing kicked in for Modern Warfare 2, I've never seen anything like it. The entire world went mental for this game. Absolutely mental. And we're talking multiplayer players and campaign players alike. Everybody was desperate to get their hands on this game. I don't think it's something that Call of Duty's managed to match since. I don't think it's something that any game's managed to match since. There are obviously games that people were very excited for, and there are games that people go to massive packed midnight launches for. But I've never seen a game like Modern Warfare 2, when it came out, had queues coming out of supermarkets at 3 o'clock in the morning, people trying to get their hands on this fucking game. I've never seen anything like that since.
Well, that was the thing. It wasn't... Because midnight launches weren't a thing, really, up until this point. In town, from where we are, Game, the one that does the midnight launches, the one in the middle of the city centre's shopping centre, rather. Mm-hmm. It's the one that's smack in the middle. They had people queuing outside the main door because they weren't allowing people to go in. They were queuing outside from 9 o'clock. Easy. Yeah. There was a queue forming, and it was just getting longer and longer and longer. And I didn't go personally, but it was one of my friends who was there to queue up. They were let in because the plan, they didn't anticipate that this game was going to be this huge. But it's not just the game shops, because back then it was Game and Game Station. I think they both existed, so both were queuing. I mean, for where we were, they were pretty much opposite at the time in shops. They were just like the opposite on the same court. Yeah. But it was the price war for the supermarkets. That's what really was hilarious, because it was, we're going to sell Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 for £35.
Yep.
And then Tesco came in and said, 30 quid. Asda, 25. And then it got to a point where they were all selling 25 quid, brand new copy of Modern Warfare 2.
Yep.
All you had to do was buy £50 worth of shopping. £50 worth of shopping, and you buy a copy of Call of Duty for 25 quid. Now, you've just spent 75 quid on a game, essentially, at this point. Because you've gone in there, you've bought your £25 game, you've gone downstairs to do the rest of your shopping, and you've gone, how can I spend 50 quid? You are some 16, 20-year-old looking, or you're the parent of a gamer, and they're just going around doing their casual weekly shopping, and their son's picked up a copy of Call of Duty, saying that it's 25 quid if you buy it today with our shopping. Yep. Because you've done your weekly shop. Because it was midnight launch over here was done on Friday?
Yep.
It was a Thursday night, Friday morning. So the people were going into Tesco Friday doing their weekly shop, as everyone does in this country, Friday's weekly shop. But you've got yourself a £25 game because for some reason the shops decided that that's a great marketing campaign, and apparently it fucking worked.
Oh yeah,
it fucking worked.
Modern Warfare 2 is one of the biggest, most successful game launches, not just Call of Duty launches, but one of the biggest and most successful game launches ever. It, like I say, and there is no other word for it as far as I'm concerned, it is a behemoth of a game. I mean, I wasn't ordering stuff online at the time. I was working when the game came out. You know, my lunch break was popping into game, you know, nipping into town to pick up a copy of Modern Warfare 2 so I could go home and play it, you know. And I remember looking at it going, now it's in my bag and I don't want to be here, I want to go home and play Modern Warfare 2. So, yeah, I mean, should we talk a bit about the actual game and not just about the marketing for it?
Yeah, let's go with the game.
So, I mean, it's set 5 years after the end of Modern Warfare 1.
Yep.
And I have to get this right. It's your main bad guy from 1's assistant to IC, his mate, Imran Zakhaev, is on a mission to make, you know, send Russia back to its former glory by killing everybody else, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's set in the same universe as Modern Warfare 1, so it's what happened if the Russians didn't fold in the Cold War and they're still Soviet, basically. So.
Yeah. Like I say, 5 years later, and Soap and Price and Gaz, who was killed at the end of Modern Warfare 1.
So you get to play so you get to have Ghost.
Yeah, they may or may not be back as Ghost.
The same bloke's voice.
It's Craig Fairbrass again, so he's back doing the voice. And, you know, I don't know about... so many people I know loved Ghost just as a character, and not just because he was wearing a cool skull balaclava, but because he was just a really cool character.
Well, he had all the one-liners.
Yeah.
Like he had with Gaz.
So Soap isn't in the SAS anymore. He's been moved, should we say, to a new group. He's now in Task Force 141, who's led by... Actually, and now Soap has a voice. He didn't have a voice in Modern Warfare 1 because you were Soap. But now you're not Soap anymore. He has a voice actor, and it's Trainspotting's Kevin McKidd. Or Dog Soldiers is Kevin McKidd. It's just Kevin McKidd.
That Scottish bloke that I don't know the name of.
Yeah, his name's Kevin McKidd.
Apparently.
You now work with Soap. You're a different person. You know, faceless guy with gun.
Roach.
And your boss... yeah. And your boss, General Shepard, is actually voiced by the legendary Lance Henriksen, the man behind Bishop in the Alien films, and you know he was in Millennium. He's Lance Henriksen. He's in fucking everything.
Yeah.
And the story does follow on quite well. It's all, you know, people killing other people. There's political intrigue. There's, you know, but because we're in, you know, we have to up the stakes from Modern Warfare. Modern Warfare was such a great campaign, such a great story that they have to up the stakes for it, and they do just that by having Russia invade the United States. And if I've got my timeline right, this is after what is probably one of the most controversial video game missions in all of video gaming. Certainly, at least for quite some time, and for quite some time afterwards. And obviously, I'm talking about the now infamous No Russian mission.
No Russian.
Where you're an undercover. I think it's when you're Roach?
No, you're playing as Joseph Allen.
It's the USMC guy. Roach is later on. You're undercover with Zakhaev's Russians. Makarov's Russians, thank you. And it's been a while since I played Modern Warfare 2.
I only know because it's the name of a pistol, I think. Makarov.
And
you just generic Russian first name, Makarov.
Yeah. Yeah, you're given an M249 and you just have to mow down everybody in an airport.
You don't have to mow them down. You can.
You don't have to,
you can choose to not fire the gun.
Did you choose to not fire the gun?
Fuck no.
Exactly. It did. I mean, no, I'm not that guy. I'm not the you should be sensitive and nice to everybody. No, fuck no, I'm not. But I did see where the issue came with this mission, because if you know it was. There is a point, and movies get this a lot, and if there's a reason for you to be killing somebody, if there's a reason for you to be shooting someone, it's acceptable. But, you know, someone's shooting at you, you shoot back at them. It's a war game. But now you're playing a guy who's mowing down innocent people in an airport, in an age where, you know, domestic terrorism or terrorism in general it comes in those kind of guises. So I can understand where the outcry came from. And fair play to Activision and Infinity Ward. They done a good job, and they patched it in so you got a choice. You didn't have to play it. You were asked at the beginning. There's an awful fucking mission coming up. Do you want to skip it? You don't have to play it at all. People like me at the time who were trophy hunters, there's not a single trophy or achievement assigned to that mission, so you weren't going to be penalised for not playing it. It was a good answer for that particular problem, because for people that were big enough and ugly enough to realise that it is just a game and it does progress the story, that's fine. But for people that were going to be a little bit offended or just felt a bit uncomfortable, again, something I can completely understand, you had the ability to skip it.
Yeah. Now, you didn't have the ability to skip it, I believe, in the Australian version, which I think it was not in it at all. I think it was actually cut completely out of it, which makes sense because Australians don't get to do anything fun.
No, the Australian ratings, especially when it comes to games, is extremely strict. I'm almost certain if you looked into it a bit more, you might find that it's probably not non-existent in the German version as well, because German copies of games are censored quite heavily too.
So I think that was more genius marketing, actually, because I didn't know about the mission No Russian, apart from the fact that it was in the news everywhere. It was people in the midnight launches that I went to. I think I went to the one at Tesco at the time. People in the queue were talking about No Russian, and now I wasn't looking into new games. I didn't particularly care enough about games back then to really, spend a lot of time on the internet trolling through, trying to find everything out about everything. So I wasn't entirely aware about what No Russian was.
Okay.
And people in the queue were talking about a mission that was what it was. It was disgusting, horrendous, and it had no place in the world, essentially, is what people in the media were saying. Now,
yeah.
As someone who's played the mission, yes, it's pretty despicable what it is that you're doing, but the game evolves better for having played it.
Oh, of course it does. It's definitely...
It's all well and good having the mission, and just at the end of the mission before it, you completely skip out the No Russian mission, and then you just get a cutscene that says the Russians have shot up a Russian airport pretending to be CIA to try and make the war that's happening happen faster.
Yeah.
And the Russians have fallen for it because there's a dead US soldier.
Yeah.
As evidence.
Oh, there's definitely... it definitely flows better as a story if you play the mission. And it definitely flows better as a game if you play the mission. But it's... The problem it has, and it's something similar to what I mentioned earlier when you play the first Call of Duty, and it's... it's not a film that you can watch and turn your eyes away from. It's something that you have to do. You physically have to press forward and to walk through this airport. If you want to be the guy that does, you physically have to pull the trigger yourself to be killing these people. And like I say, and you know this well enough, I'm not the guy that goes, just because it's in games, it's going to turn me into a psychopath. Because no, it's fucking not.
Are you sure?
Pretty sure.
I've met you.
No. Dickheads and useless fucking prats are what's going to turn me into a psychopath. Not fucking video games.
I'm shooting all these innocent Russian civilians in an airport. Now I'm going to go do it in real life because it happened in Call of Duty. So
yeah, exactly. But so I do see the point in the uproar. I think Acti and Infinity Ward done the right thing by giving you the option to skip it. But I'm under no illusions. This was a buttload of free marketing for Activision and Infinity Ward. Because it's negative. People trying to be negative about something like that. When most logical people will go, well, it's just a game. The people that get offended by it will be offended by it, but they weren't going to play the fucking game anyway. But you've now got a bunch of other people that go, I wonder what all the fuss was about, and go out and buy the game, and they're 50 quid worth of Asda shopping. I think it done very well. I think it did benefit a lot from the outcry, and it's certainly more warranted than, say, the year before in the micro offence that was caused when you were killing attack dogs in World at War. And some fucking busybody college student had to complain about it, and because he complained on the internet, fucking PETA got involved. At least this one was maybe worth talking about, But yeah, Modern Warfare 2, not more of the same, not in the slightest. It's an excellent, excellent game, and it evolved the game, the story, the and again the multiplayer introduced Spec Ops missions.
Yes.
So it introduced co-op to Modern Warfare.
Now, Spec Ops missions, there was one that really stuck with me, and that was, you mentioned it earlier, All Gillied Up. Or as it was in Spec Ops, it was Gillies in the Mist, which is named for the achievement, where it was essentially a 2-player version of the stealth section of crawling through the long grass at Chernobyl. From the first Modern Warfare game, which was the first time I played that mission, was in Spec Ops, before going back to playing it again, and obviously a bit wiser. I do like the game. I do like that mission, and when I eventually get around to it in the remaster, I can't wait to play it again, because it's a lot of fun. So the Spec Ops certainly helped.
Yeah, Spec Ops was a lot of fun. I quite enjoyed Spec Ops because it was something, because I don't like, so I tend to not play that much multiplayer anymore. But co-op, when you get a mate, I'm on, do you want to have a quick go at it? Yeah, why not? Because it's just me and him, and we can whack it on, just normal difficulty and just chat shit while we do it. That's the kind of co-op and multiplayer I like. So yeah, I didn't mind Spec Ops. No, Modern Warfare 2, I loved it. There's no other way to describe it. I fucking adore Modern Warfare 2. And if it wasn't for the fact that I'm a sucker for Call of Duty, and as much as I say every year, oh no, I'm not going to buy it, I'll wait for it to go cheap, I still fucking buy it on release day. If it wasn't for the fact that I wanted to play Modern Warfare Remastered, I would have hung around and waited for the much rumoured Modern Warfare trilogy to come out on the new machines and bought that. Because, just talking about it makes me want to go and play Modern Warfare 2 again. Much like the first one, so many standout moments in it. So many moments you can go, fuck me, do you remember that bit? Do you remember when you saved the White House when you felt like you were about to die, but you threw green smoke to say everything was okay? It just an outstanding game.
Yeah, and as far as it goes, it's the plot twist in that game was probably only second to Black Ops plot twist, which we'll get into later. But yeah, it was certainly something. And again, it adds to the whole you play a character as they die situation. And
oh yeah,
you know what? I'd say this one is probably as bad as crawling into a nuclear explosion. It felt wrong.
Yeah, because there was the moment towards the end, wasn't there? There was we're going to spoil this in case you haven't played Modern Warfare 2, but it's while you're playing as Roach, isn't it?
Yeah, and
so Roach and Ghost are betrayed by their boss, which is bad enough as it is. And while it's not an original plot twist, it wasn't necessarily something you saw coming.
Yeah.
But you're then shot and set on fire, and you kind of, and it's not for long, but you're kind of sit there and left to burn.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not pleasant, but there is that feeling, like I mentioned earlier, of having to one up what they did with Modern Warfare 1. I don't think they did it in that particular instance, but it was quite horrible nonetheless.
It was quite horrendous, and the thing is that I'm pretty sure you don't die straight away from being set on fire. I think that there's the scene of Price and Soap coming around because they find out about it, so they've come to you, and you're still alive because you see Price and Soap talking from the perspective of a dude who's essentially dead on the floor, and then you die slowly then. So you're playing a character who's been set on fire, and it's hours later you're still alive after having been set on fire.
Yeah.
So just if you think about that, it's awful.
And more straight from the headlines kind of story. I
tell you what, in 2 years' time we'll get a Modern Warfare 2 remaster with the next Infinite Warfare 2, probably.
We're going to get to that in a bit as well.
Yeah.
Because after we're a couple of games away from the cycle changing up a little bit. And that is actually where we're going to stop for this week. Because holy hell, what was supposed to be a quick talk about Call of Duty turned into a 3-and-a-bit-hour marathon. So we're going to cut this in half. We're going to stop here and come back next week, and you can have the rest of it then. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. We are at Character Unlock on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram. Anywhere you can type at Character Unlock, you will find us. And I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I hope you come back for the second part of it in just a few days' time. Thank you very much for listening again.